Destiny. The last time we'll get you to do it. Thank you guys. Stone of Destiny. Very important stone. Nobody is sure quite how old the stone is or where exactly it comes from. The English have a legend that says that it was the pillow for the biblical character Jacob. Jacob. Others say that it was the travelling altar for St. Columba, who brought Christianity to Scotland. Others say that it came from Egypt or even Palestine. But one thing is definitely known about the Stone of Destiny, and that is the prophecy, which says that wherever the stone doth lie, there the Scots shall rule. So, when Edward I invaded Scotland in 1296, he surely kept this in mind, because he stole away the Stone of Destiny and brought it down to Westminster Abbey in London, where he put it underneath the coronation chair, which meant that whenever someone was crowned King or Queen of England, they were also crowned King or Queen of Scotland. The chair was above the stone. The stone stayed down in Westminster Abbey from 1296 all the way until 1996, except for one brief interlude in 1950, which is going to be the subject of my tale today. Picture the scene. 1950s Glasgow. There are 4 students. We have the ringleader, Ian Hamilton. We also have Kay Matheson, the one girl in the group. We also have a Vernon and an Albert, who are sort of subsidiary people to this story. Now, these 4 students are all fervent Scottish nationalists, and they are wondering how they can win the best victory for Scotland as a whole. And they decide to steal back the Stone of Destiny from the evil English, which is why they find themselves at 4 AM on Christmas morning down in Westminster Abbey in St. Edward's Chapel. They are all standing in front of the Stone of Destiny and the coronation chair. They are overcome with excitement. They are about to win one of the mightiest victories possible for Scottish nationalism. So they all gather around the stone. They each take up an edge, and with all their strength, they all count 1, 2, 3, hoist! They lift the stone up, and they manage to lift it out of its English prison for the first time since 1296. And it's lifted out of its English prison for a mighty 3 seconds. But then, the frail limbs of one malnourished student give way, and the stone crashes to the ground and breaks into 2 pieces. The students freak out. They have just broken one of the most important relics in all of Scottish history. But, take some deep breaths. Ian Hamilton quickly takes off his coat, lies it on the floor, and they drag the 2 pieces of the stone onto the coat. Take the coat and they drag it for the next 45 minutes across the floor of Westminster Abbey. Eventually they reach the door. Then they also reach some steps. But Ian Hamilton is convinced that he can pick up the smaller piece of the stone. So he does that, manages to hoist the smaller piece up with the help of Kay Matheson. They go outside, put it in the boot of the car. They brought 2 cars along with them. They close the boot, breath of fresh air. But then, a policeman jumps out of nowhere. They're pretty quick on their feet. They manage to make up an excuse that they're a young couple who couldn't find a room in London for the night. The policeman, he's in a pretty good mood. It's Christmas, so he has a little chat with them, offers them a cigarette. Then he leaves, and strongly suggests that they do the same. So Kay and Ian, they both jump in the car, and they start to drive off, worried about the other 2 left with the larger piece of the stone. So they drive off a bit, fool the policeman, and then Ian jumps out and tells Kay to go back to Scotland with the smaller piece of the stone. Kay takes the smaller piece, gets back to Scotland, no problem. The smaller piece of the stone is safe back in Scotland. Meanwhile, Ian goes back to Westminster Abbey. He returns to find that his 2 friends have disappeared. That light is fast approaching, but at least the Stone of Destiny is outside. It's in the builder's yard. So he decides to go back and get the second car, which is parked about half a mile away. So he runs back, and he thinks to just pick his keys out of his pocket. Except he can't find his keys. He's trying to figure out where to leave them, till it suddenly dawns on him that he has left his keys in his coat. The same coat that they used to drag the which now lies in tatters on the floor. So he runs back to Westminster Abbey and tries to find the keys. Except he doesn't have a torch or a flashlight. They didn't come very well prepared for this rescue mission. But he does have 2 boxes of matches. So he crawls along the floor, lighting match after match, trying to find keys. He uses 2 boxes of matches and still he has not found the keys. He has no choice but to leave the Abbey behind. So, dejected, he walks down the central aisle until he hears a crunch. He stepped on the keys. In a fluster, picks up the keys, runs back out, gets the car, comes back. Stone of Destiny, the larger bit, is outside in the builder's yard. But with a feat of strength that only a true Scotsman could pull off, he picks up the stone, hoists it up with every last particle of energy, and somehow manages to get it in the boot of the car. He drives off. They've got away. Along the way, he sees his 2 friends walking away from the Abbey. They're looking pretty sad, but he picks them up, says he's got the stone, and everything's fine. You'd think that they would drive back to Scotland with the Stone of Destiny. This is not what they do. They drive to Kent, county in England, and they bury the stone in the field, because they predict, rightfully as it turns out, that the English police will soon be looking for them. Next morning, the alarm is sounded, and the border between Scotland and England is closed for the first time in over 300 years. But the stone is in this field in Kent. Nobody knows about it except the 4 students. So they decide to stay in Scotland, biding their time. So they manage to do this, tell a few people about what they've done. They start to talk to a very patriotic stonemason, who's really impressed with the first little bit of the story. He's fine until he hears the last bit, about them burying the Stone of Destiny in a soggy field in England. The Stone of Destiny is made out of limestone. Limestone dissolves pretty easily in water. It rains a lot in England, and this field was soggy. The stonemason completely freaks out. You mean that you buried the Stone of Destiny in the middle of a field in England? Are you crazy? You have to go back down there now and save it. I apologize for my Scottish accent. I had to pull it out at least at one point. So, 4 students, Ian Hamilton grabs the nearest people. He drives straight back down to England. It takes 18 hours, and finally he gets back to the field in Kent. Finds the field, except that now there's a caravan parked exactly on the spot where the Stone of Destiny is buried. But Ian Hamilton, he starts to talk to the gypsies who are living in the caravan park, and they find that they have something in common. They both don't like the English very much. So the gypsies offer to help them. They move the caravan, find the Stone of Destiny. There's a little bit of erosion on the corners, but nothing too serious. Manage to take the stone, they take out one of the car seats in the car, put the Stone of Destiny in its place, and cover it in what else but a tartan rug. They drive back up to Scotland, manage to fool the police on the border, and the Stone of Destiny has returned back to Scotland for the first time in 700 years. Wonderful. Now they have a few parties, they show the stone off, but eventually they realize that they have to keep the stone a secret, and it's not very respectful to have it as a simple party prop. So the 4 students decide that they've made their point, and they decide to return the stone back to, release the stone, give it back to the police. So they go back to Arbroath Abbey, take the stone, leave it on the altar, and leave it in a Scottish flag, which is also called a saltire. They think maybe the English will let them keep it. The English don't let them keep the stone. The leader of the Abbey wakes up, calls the police, and within 24 hours, the Stone of Destiny is back in Westminster Abbey, where it stays until 1996. So only about 50 years. John Major was leader of the Conservative Party, and 1997 was an election year. He was pretty worried about this because he wasn't very popular up here in Scotland. So he decided to perhaps gain a bit of favour with the Scots. So he decides to give back the Stone of Destiny, which happens in a grand ceremony. The stone is passed from English to Scottish, exactly on the border, halfway across a bridge across the River Tweed. So very pompous. They bring it up into Edinburgh. It's left in the Palace of Holyrood House overnight, where it's given royal treatment. Exactly what this means for a great big hunk of limestone, I don't know, but it got royal treatment. They again got brought down the Royal Mile, bagpipes playing, drums. They played Mission Impossible, the theme tune, on the bagpipes. It was a pretty cheesy ceremony. But eventually, the Stone of Destiny is put back in Edinburgh Castle, where it rightfully belongs. 1997, election year. John Major does not win a single seat up here in Edinburgh, in Scotland. The reason this is the case is because of Tony Blair, who was offering the Scots far more than a hunk of limestone. He was offering them their own parliament in a policy called devolution. The Scots are all for this and voted for Tony Blair in hordes. So the Scots got their own parliament in 1999, and it's been the 10th year anniversary this year. The Scottish Parliament on the other end of the Royal Mile, very crazy building, went pretty over budget. But for some people, this is not enough. The main party in Scotland at the moment is the Scottish National Party, who wants Scotland to be a completely independent country. We might not get that wish sort of in the next few years, but give it a couple of million years. Because, as I mentioned earlier, Scotland was drifting north on a tectonic plate. This is still happening, and Scotland and England are on different tectonic plates. So, Scotland is moving faster north than England. So in a few million years, Scotland will completely break away from England. And the Scots will be able to perch on the end of their island, wave goodbye to the English, and perhaps make some other hand gestures, I don't know. And the English will have lost one of the most fascinating, interesting, exciting people in the United Kingdom. And with that, I finish the tale of the Stone of Destiny. I hope you have enjoyed it. So, guys, this is